In 1979, Ken and Roberta Williams started a little company called Sierra Entertainment. They specialized in graphic adventure games mostly for the Apple II and MS-DOS computer systems and made some of the most influential video games of all time. In 1984, Sierra was contracted by IBM to make games for their newest computer, the PC Junior. They developed a handful of games for IBM, including the very first animated graphic adventure game, King's Quest. King's Quest has since fallen into obscurity, but its influence on the video game industry is still felt to this day. Nowadays, you can play King's Quest 1 on PC through Steam, GOG, or an emulator. I played on Steam Deck through the Scum VM emulator, and after 3 hours in-game, here's my review of King's Quest: Quest for the Crown. King's Quest was originally released in 1984 and has been ported to tons of computer systems since then. It was developed for the IBM PC Junior, but also made its way to the Apple II, Atari ST, Amiga, MS-DOS, and even the Sega Master System. It was also remade in 1990 with more advanced graphics for the time and some slight gameplay improvements. King's Quest was the very first graphic adventure game to feature fully animated characters on screen. It was the first time in a text-based adventure game where the position of the character on screen actually makes a difference in the gameplay. The King's Quest series went on for 14 years with 8 main entries and cemented lead designer Roberta Williams as a video game legend. Nowadays, the series is all but forgotten, so actually getting the game is kind of limited. I only found it in a collection on Steam and GOG, and getting it to play on my Steam Deck took a lot of patience. What I ended up doing was buying the GOG version, then I added it as a non-Steam game in my library, and ran it through the Scum VM emulator on Steam's RetroArch app. It actually ran well once I figured it out, but here's the deal. This game requires the use of a full keyboard, so I had to invoke Scum VM's virtual keyboard constantly. Now obviously, if you just play on PC with a mouse and keyboard, this problem doesn't exist, but this is a Dinkus handheld game, so I wanted to play on Steam Deck. It took a while, but I was able to map all the keys I needed to be able to play on a handheld system. My mouse was controlled by the left joystick, I clicked with the left trigger, brought up the keyboard with the select button, and used the A button for enter. Once again, you don't have to do any of this, and if you play King's Quest with a keyboard, it'll work perfectly. Now let's talk about the gameplay. In King's Quest, you take control of Sir Graham, the bravest knight in the Kingdom of Daventry. The gameplay is almost entirely accomplished through text prompts done on the keyboard. You can type things like look at tree or take bucket to perform actions. The game's parser interprets the text and either performs the action, explains what you're looking at, or gives you an error message. You can also control Sir Graham's movement with a joystick or a mouse click. Here's the first negative. Sir Graham moves unbelievably slow. I mean, you can see how long it takes me to get across one screen. The movement in general is not great, but that's mostly because this game's so primitive. It's over 40 years old. There are a couple pretty frustrating platforming parts that require crazy accuracy, and that made exploring Daventry more of a chore than an experience. The game also doesn't give you any guidance, and unless you have the original instruction booklet, you're stuck with just figuring it out yourself or finding a guide online. It is almost impossible to figure this entire game out on your own because the text commands you need to type are so specific. If you spell a word wrong, if you type toss instead of throw, or use any synonym, then the game won't understand at all. So you not only need a guide to figure out what to do, but also what words can be used. Performing the correct action gets you points, and doing a better action will get you more points than just a basic action. For example, at one point you're tasked with slaying a dragon. You could say throw dagger and kill it, or you could say throw water and extinguish its fire breath, causing it to run away. The more creative option gets you more points, and I actually found this pretty rewarding. The problem is none of these options are clear, and you have to either take a wild guess or look up a guide online like I did. To even get an idea of how to start the game, you have to walk to the castle, open the door, walk to the throne room, and talk to the king. He tells you about 3 treasures to find so that Sir Graham can become king and save Daventry. You'll encounter a dragon, a witch, a sorcerer, a wolf, a giant, and more on your adventure, looking around and picking up items to help along the way. Like I said, unless you're an absolute genius, you'll need a guide to play this game, and with one you can play the whole thing in a couple hours. Overall, performing the right actions and getting points felt rewarding, but slowly walking everywhere to explore Daventry and having to retype phrases constantly was a real slog. I bought King's Quest on GOG through the King's Quest 1-3 collection for $9.99. The remakes are also available on Steam through the King's Quest collection for $19.99. This is not to be confused with the episodic reboot from 2015, that's a completely different game. Now since you asked for more, I'll give it a score from 1 to 4. On the revolutionary Dinkus 4-star scale, King's Quest 1 Quest for the Crown gets 2 out of 4 stars. This game is not necessarily bad, it's just primitive, and we're conditioned to higher quality now. King's Quest laid the foundation for modern graphic adventure games, so if you like Telltale games, Grim Fandango, Detroit Become Human, Life is Strange, you have King's Quest to thank for it. I know it feels dated today, but this is the very first graphic adventure game that had actual animation on screen instead of just static images. Roberta Williams revolutionized graphic adventures and video games as a whole, and for that we should all be grateful. For today's average gamer though, King's Quest is going to be more trouble trouble than it's worth. Between not knowing where to go and what to do, the slow movement, and the general nothingness between actions, it's enough to turn most people off completely. Still, trying to get the most points is fun. I ended up with 150 out of 158, so not too shabby. Overall, King's Quest is really only enjoyable if you have a deep appreciation for video game history like I do. It's interesting to see where the framework for modern adventure games comes from, but it's just not as entertaining as it was in 1984. Don't buy this game, but maybe check it out if it's free.